problem.
Hey guys, I'm just gonna hit the buttons here. And happy Friday. How are you guys doing? I hope you're doing great. I'm having a stormy Friday today. Lots of rain and wind, and so yeah, it's fall. It's officially fall for me here. And so that's great because the jewelry that we have is right on theme with that. Lots of golds and coppers and matte finishes and earth hues. And so that's the project we have today is exactly like spot on. And it's also a really like interesting pattern. It's one of those things that I was trying to do something else and then it morphed into this. So like we've talked about, and a lot of you guys take a lot of our classes and we're always saying, yeah, if you have this crazy idea, just try it, because you never know, that idea, maybe that one doesn't work, but maybe it sparks another one, and then that sparks another one. And so a lot of these projects come from moments like that, where you're just creating something to see what will happen. Maybe that idea in your head didn't work, but something else came from it. So this basket weave bracelet is an example of one that I was just working on, and something else you know, that I had in mind was the goal, and then this became what it was. So how it looks, let me grab the finished sample here, is I did a two-tone, and that was just for fun, you know, because it's kind of the same thing over and over again. So having some extra colors can be a way to not have to count as much too, because I made it so I can just fold it and measure it. But yeah, this is the design. It's all ladder stitch over and over and over again. And then I put some suede in the center and beautiful findings to attach. The here on my mat, let me show you everything that I used. So for the finished design, I did use one of the 3-packs. And this one is called, it's all gold metallics. It's got 2 matte silvers, and it's got a shiny silver in there. And here on the mat, I've got the rest of them too. There's some crystal, and there's also a bunch of findings. Oh, thanks so much. Thanks, Carrie. Yeah, and so the, here again, this is the palette, a little closer view of it, all Czech 10-0. And I want to talk a little bit about that. This design is very incredible for 10-0 design, 11-0, because of the intricacy. It makes it look really good. And it's a great size scale for the suede that I'm using, which is this one here. And so depending on what millimeter of suede you'd like to use, you may or may not want to use a different size bead. But I felt like this was a great match. And so for this one, I believe this one is the 3mm. And all of these are in the handout. So here's the handout here. And everything I used is listed. I did have some crystals. Those are totally optional. I had bought like 1 strand, and I have been using them over and over again as charms and embellishments for like all of my jewelry. I just throw a little crystal at the bottom. It adds so much. It just elevates it. So that is an optional thing, that if you want to do that, you'll need some headpins. And so here's some 1-inch headpins. And then for the connection here, I used these. They're a folding crimp end. If you've never used these before, we're going to demo how to put those on. They're super easy. You know, you just fold them over, and then these are very soft, but not so soft that you could do with your fingers, but a tool you'll have no problem. We're going to use some chain nose pliers, just gently fold those over. And then of course I've got jump rings and a lobster claw to join everything together. So that covers the beads, the findings, and the suede. There's also, we need to cover thread. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about that. I did use the Nymo thread for both of my designs. Here I use the gold color. That's the one that comes in this pack. This is the one that's in the handout. It's like a mix of like gold and gray and white. So the gold looks really great with this one. The one I'm going to demo to you today, I used black, so you can see it a little better. But just note that when you do use the black, you're going to get kind of like what looks like a stitched, like it's stitched on the sides, you know, whereas if you use a matching thread color, you won't see that. And incidentally, this is how it looks before you put your suede in it. And so Nymo thread is what I used, but you can use Wildfire. And if you want to use Wildfire, go with the 0.06, because you're going to have an easier time with that one, and maybe switch down to a size 12 beading needle. And it looks like we were already working with 12s today anyway, so that one's already here. And then you'll just need to choose, and it's a trade-off, and I talk a little bit about that in the handout as well. But the trade-off is this: it'll stabilize your stitch a lot easier if you're using Wildfire. but your passes through your beads are going to be tighter. And, you know, having an easy pass through the beads it's a trade-off. I think I'm always torn on which one I prefer. Stabilized stitch, but having to use the chainless pliers on occasion and worrying about broken beads versus just using some Nymo. So I don't know, try it, see what you like. And you can always change up the bead size, which I was thinking for demoing this today, it is such a repetitive stitch. You can, once you've seen it a few times, you'll get it. But I was thinking I'll start with a size 8 bead and some Wildfire so you can see the structure, the path. Then I'll switch and start using Nymo and the small beads so you can see it with the smaller. And then from there, we'll do the finishing. How much thread to cut? So a comfortable working length is what I always recommend for starting projects like these. This is one where you're going to use a lot of thread. Not too much. It's not like some of our designs where we're just adding and adding, but this one is going to be, you'll probably add thread one time if you make a length about this long. But I had this idea that I didn't include in the handout because I only thought of it earlier, like yesterday. But what if we started with a super long tail and worked from the center, finished one side, and then let that super, super long tail work the other side? You can do that with this stitch because it's workable in both directions. So consider that when you're cutting it. And when it says to cut a comfortable length, cut that ×2, and then start your first stitch at the midpoint of that thread. So I think that's what I'll demo today, because that actually will save you adding thread at all in this design. You can get around that. That's always a bonus. And so for today's demo, I was going to use some 8/0s to start. And again, we will switch to the small beads next. But I just want to demo it in a way that's really easy to see. See, you've got the, you know, get the stitch down, and then we'll go to the tinies. So what I just did there is I flattened the end of the Wildfire so that it's easier to put it through my needle. And here's my beading needle. And I'm working with a size 12. And just threads right through. It's so great. And I'm going to cut just maybe about, let's see. For me, that's probably about 60 inches. It's not a full length, but this is just for the demo. So you'll want to cut what I think is probably about 120 inches if you're doing the midpoint idea. Okay, so here's color A and color B, and it's optional if you want to color block it like this, or you could just do all one color. You just do like an all brown and it would look like a basket. Something like that, or copper. What I'm showing here is the matte gold and the matte silver from that 3-pack. And these came from our size 8 3-pack. So these two colors. All right, so the first step is to ladder stitch. And so for ladder stitching, you just want to pick up 2 beads. And again, working from that midpoint, if that's what you're doing, you would just bring it to the midpoint of the thread and start working here. So you'd leave a super long tail over here and an equal amount of working length on this side. And then come back up through the first bead and pull tight. And so you'll get a little side-by-side beads like that. And if you're working with the Nymo and the size 10 Czech beads, you want to go back through and reinforce it. Go through one more time, and that'll really stabilize things for you. So that's just looping through. So that's just the first step, is just getting those 2 little beads laddered. And if you're worried about memorizing this, you don't need to. It's all here. But basically what we're going to do is we've got this ladder stitch going, and then we're going to connect it and do another ladder up here. And the whole idea is to just keep adding rungs to your ladder the whole way. And so what you'll notice once you've reinforced it is that your tail side and your working side will be exiting from the same bead. And that's good. That's what you want. And then in between is 7 beads. And then the 8th bead I'm going to pick up is going to be the one I ladder to. So here's 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's one rung of the ladder right there. And now I need to pick up an 8th bead. It's going to be the top that I'm going to ladder to, and I need one more. Come back through it. back through the last bead. And I'm going to work it by holding this down here like that. And so now what you have, it looks like kind of like a little goalpost there. And go ahead and reinforce that one we just laddered. So just through this bead right here. And down. And then up through the last one here. And you'll have that. So if you got this far, you're ready to add the next rung. So turn and come through this bead again. It's this one here. And we'll work a few rows like this, and then we'll come back and I'll show you working from the other side with a different color. And then we can switch to our small beads. And any questions, please feel free to add them. But I want to point out something here. So we've got our top bead already, and our bottom bead. The number of beads in between each of these is 7, at least in this design. You can change that if you want to. So the beads I should be picking up here should be 7. So I got 1 too many, 7 here, and they just come down. And now that's all connected. And it looks really great. I actually like it in this size 8 beads too. This is my first time trying it with the larger ones. It's really pretty. So pick up another bead now and then go back through this last one and go through it in the direction that the thread is not coming out of. So you just want to come back through here. And what we're doing here is we're just laddering on another bead. And those of you that love brick stitch, this is the same thing you do to increase in brick stitch. So there's 1. Oops, sorry. I'm going to come back through it. And so at this point, you can just decide, based on the thread you're using and the size beads and all of that, whether or not you feel like you need to reinforce that ladder. I did it 100% of the time working with the Nymo on the size 10 Czech, which means coming back through that bead and then coming back up through the one we just added. So that extra little loop around, what that does is it keeps this edge flush. All these beads will be next to each other like that. So just play with it and see how you feel about it when you're creating yours, if you feel like it needs it or not. And I feel like it needed it with the Nymo for sure. All right, so from here, we're gonna need to string the 7 beads that go in between, and then we're gonna need an additional bead, right? And that additional bead, we're gonna lock that one to this bead. So the total I need to string right now is 8. And again, that's the 7 that sit here in between. 3, sorry, I left one off, 7. And then we need the 1 more to be the one that ladders to the top one here. So there's that. And I'm just going to slide that down. And if you don't want to worry about counting it too much, you can always just do an extra check like this. Just lay it next to the one before it, just to make sure your counts are good. And then come back through that bead. And the reason I'm coming through the top of it is because I'm exiting through the top of this one, and my goal is to join these 2, right? And do another ladder stitch. So I'm going to pull this down. And then I'm going to come up through this one here. I'm just going to get my tail thread out of the way. Sorry about that. So you'll have your 3rd one on. And right now what I'm going to do is go back through that again. And the reason I want to do that is you see how this one here is kind of, it's got a little tilt to it. And just like in brick stitch, to fix that, all you got to do is go back through. Same tricks that work in different stitches always work. So there's 1 more. And if you want to tighten it up, just put your thumbnail above it. Just give it a pull. There we go. So that's the whole thing. Those are all the steps combined into one. They're all the same step. They just kind of change based on where you're exiting from and what you're adding. So from here, the natural next progression would be to add one bead and then go up through this one. And it will sit side by side with that top one there. Reinforce it to make it sit exactly like, you know, right next to it. So back down, back up, and back down. There we go. So from here, you guessed it, our 7 beads for the middle plus 1. So a total of 8. So there's 4 and 4. And then you just want to come back down through just that one. So you get that. And now, so we're exiting from this one. We want to turn and come just through this one. If it loosens up on you, it's okay. Put it flat on the mat and just go ahead and pull. Put your thumbnail above that last bead we added. And that should tighten it up. So there's that next round. And I'm going to go through just those top edge 2 beads again. So going through this one, coming up through here. There it is. So of course, next we would pick up this one. And any questions, please drop them in the chat. I'm going to do one more row here. And then I'm going to check in, change it up. And I also wanted to share some other ideas for working with different bead sizes. There's just so much you can do with this. I love it. So there's my ladder, reinforced it. And of course, since I'm working with a size 8 bead right now, it gives you more options for what to string inside of it. For example, you could use something like fairy silk or like sari silk would be really cute. And so there's 8. And the reason I strung 8, again, is that I need my 7 to go in between. And that 8th one is the one I'm going to ladder to the top bead here. So it really is, you know, it's the same thing over and over. It's just keeping track of where you are in space and what bead needs to go where next. And then a little trick of reinforcing. You got it. So there's that. There it is with size 8s. Now, if you wanted to come along and let's say we kept working, we had all the beads we needed on this design. I believe I went out to 28 or 30 or so for 1/2. And then I came back and worked the other side, 30 beads back that way. But you could also work this all the way and then add, you know, it doesn't matter which direction you're going, but I'm going to switch to the tail just to show you in case anyone liked that idea for working backwards to save adding thread at a time. So I'm going to go ahead and flatten again. This is the tail side. Hadn't done that yet. Grab another beading needle, size 12. Just bring that on there. And from here, I'm going to flip the work and move the working side out of the way. And now I'm working with the tail side, but it's almost impossible to tell that it's the tail side. It's identical, right? From where we're working. Move up a little bit. So new color, same thing. Just going to ladder to the last bead that I've got on that bottom there. Go through it all again. And I am working with, in case anyone was just joining, I'm working with Wildfire at the moment for demo purposes, but you can use Wildfire if you want. 3, 4. And I'm going to ladder stitch this last bead to the top here. Coming through, pulling down. And I just need to come up to that last one. It really does help if you kind of just pinch the work when you're doing this one step. Once it's locked in place, you don't have as hard a time. But it's that first unreinforced loop that you get a lot of motion and wiggle, and sometimes the beads come out. There it is. So we would just keep working until we ran out of thread. Now, if you needed to add thread, super simple thing to do. All you would need to do is go in through the work and just start laddering through. So just like we've been doing, but without adding beads, you just stitch down and then up and then down and maybe around one time, then down and then up. Once you've changed direction 3, maybe 4 times, come through a row and then just start working. And it actually doesn't matter if you start working from here or from here. You can work from any corner and it's going to work fine. So it's the most forgiving design ever, I think. So let's see. One more sequence. Yeah. So I'll add another bead here. So picking up a bead. And actually, why don't I change the color so it's super easy to see? Go up through here. I just want to go through the top bead. And how to know what direction to go through that bead, it has to do with the direction you added the last one. So when I picked this bead up, I was exiting from the bead in the direction that I needed to go up through this direction, right? If that makes any sense. This is reinforcing it. And I'll show at the bottom. So there's another little edge to our ladder sticking out. Come down. Let's string our beads for the middle. And again, the count is 7 for the rung. And then we need 1 more to attach to the other side. So here's this one. And to visualize where to go from here, it helps to lay it flat on the mat and look at it. When you do that, it becomes super obvious. Yeah, you need to go down. And then sometimes it's different depending on if you were exiting from the bead this way, right? So we just have to look at it. But all of the possible outcomes for where your thread could be are in the handout. So you can see step by step what happens over and over. And it's a combination of 4 steps that resets itself after the 4th step. So there's that. And so from here, I knew I would want my next bead. I knew I would want to go this way because I'm exiting from the top. You're always going through the side that doesn't have thread sticking out. Down through there. Reinforce. And then to as you start working, you'll start doing what I call kind of like a shorthand where you summarize steps into one. So here's my 8. I believe that's 8. Yeah. And then before I've even done anything else, I'm just going to go ahead and go through that top bead. It just speeds it up a lot. Bring it down. Those should lock in parallel to that. And I want to come up through that top bead. And then I will go back through just those 2, those 2 top edgemost beads there. And again, that's just my reinforcing step to make sure that it all locks. And so that's the whole thing. And you would just keep going and stitching along until you had a length that you like. It's going to go a lot faster with the size 8s. Here's a good comparison to show you. So I did 28 rows here, 28 rows for this side. But if you're working with size 8, you'd be done in, I think, 15 rows or so. And let's see, I see a good question from Patty. Yeah, you could take a loom pattern that you've got that has the same number. Well, actually, there's no reason you can't change the number that's in between these. So you could do it for any, what's it called? Column count of looms. So any number of beads across, you could take any loom pattern you have and create it this way. It's just each time you create one of these rows, you would need to take a look at that loom pattern and make sure that these 9 beads here are in the pattern of your loom pattern. And that would work great. The only thing is when you put the suede through it, it's going to cut your pattern in half, but maybe that's okay. It'd still work good. Or maybe you don't have to put the suede in it. This actually looks very cool without suede in it. And it's, it's loose. You can see that they come apart, but yeah, the stitching is so tight that it actually doesn't really matter. So yeah, it's a cheat loom. Kind of cool idea. Thanks, Patty. Now I'm wishing I did a pattern.
Hey Danielle, I'm
Yeah.
looking at the sidebar and obviously we all want you to start it one more time so that we
Yeah.
know exactly. Starting is the most important part, I have
Yeah.
learned. And if I can figure out how to go from your starting instructions, I usually can finish it. So definitely would love to see it one more time. People are asking, have you ever tried it longer? Have you ever made a choker or a necklace?
Not yet, but this would make an amazing choker. And it would be cool with a thicker cord inside. So for example, the 3mm suede, it doesn't fill all the space in there. Like you could use something thicker, or you could make the number of beads in between each of the sides more. So like instead of 7, make it 9 or even 11, and you would have more space for like a something like that. What I really have in mind right now is like some sari ribbon because I have a lot of that laying around here.
Right.
I just think that would be really pretty. And I'm always looking for something to do with sari ribbon.
We
But what
we
about
did.
chain?
We did start talking about alternates to the leather. You know,
Yeah.
could we use ribbon? Could we use lace? And of course, and truthfully, Danielle, I assumed when I saw the pattern visually, I thought there were two rows. I thought there was a row. I thought it was like two levels. I didn't realize it was flat. I'm looking forward to you actually showing us how you are lacing the ribbon through.
Oh yeah, and it's super easy, and it actually is very, very helped by these ends. What I basically did is I put one end on first, and I left it on the spool so I know how much to cut, so I don't waste
Right?
any of my suede. Went through, yeah, and then put the ribbon on the end.
And have you done this pattern using different size beads? So Marguerite is saying like maybe tens for the latter edge and eight for the center.
You would, but what you would get is bubbling because your edges are going to be less wide. And then for example, if I wanted all of these size 8 beads to sit side by side like that, but they had to all go into a 10-0 edge, all of these, so here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3. All of this would be like that, squished in like that.
Right. Okay. So we're gonna urge Marguerite to try it as a sample.
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely always try it. What will happen is these guys will overlap each other and it might look really amazing. So of course, my motto is always try it.
Because I think we realized in some of our classes that there's a small group of us who are taking your classes. We love it when it goes wonky. So
Oh, I have some of those to share. We could
maybe
do a
that
whole
will
class
be
on here's
great.
the ideas that didn't work.
Okay, so that just summarizes some of the questions that happened in your first round of teaching. So I'll
Okay,
let you go back to a start.
start.
And
Okay.
you did get a question, are you teaching with 10-Os or 8-Os?
At
And
the moment, yeah, at the
answer
moment
that again.
I was using these to demo the first one because I thought it would help people to see it a little better. But now I'm gonna switch. And I'm gonna bring these guys back, the ones that I actually did the original in. And I'm gonna show a demo with these. And I'm gonna use the Nymo now, so you can get a feel for, at least you won't be able to really get a feel for it, but you'll see what I'm doing and you'll see the difference to how Wildfire performs with compared to Nymo in certain designs. I did use the gold when I made my sample originally. Using a contrasting thread will give you a very different look. You'll get kind of a ribbon effect on the side because you can really see that black thread in there. But with the gold, not so much. So, but I'm going to demo with the black so you can see what I'm doing. And this is the pack I used. So you got all the colors, you know, they're all here. And then I've got this gray calling my name because I want to do another one of these in just all silver and use the gray for it. How cute would that be? I just need more time. I'll get to it. So let's see. Again, I've got a size 12 beading needle. This time I'm using the size D Nymo. I've got a size 10 Czech beads. Let's start with the gold. And oh, I forgot to mention, I wanted to mention it before we were talking about it before class, but you saw that I've made 2 samples, right? I made the original and then this one for showing you threading. Well, I still have all these left. I only used these 2 colors. This one didn't get used in this design, but we're using this one next week. So hang on to that one. But this is all all I've got left. I've got enough for like at least 2 more bracelets, maybe 3. So this goes a long way. It's really great little packs. All right, so threading the needle with Nymo. It's, you know, you just have to give yourself some grace and some patience. It happens. It goes through. A really great tip I got from a friend, Emily and Kate. You guys might know Kate Richberg and Emily Miller. They taught me how to thread a needle with threads other than the plasticized ones you can flatten. You take and hold the thread, and then you just bring the needle to the thread instead of trying to push the thread through your needle. That can sometimes help. But that said, even then, it's still tricky and challenging. Don't give up. It happens. It works. It just, yeah, it takes a minute. And I'm going to get my thread snips. Where did I put my scissors? There they go. And again, just a comfortable working length. And if you want to double that, feel free to double it and work from the midpoint so you can save yourself adding thread. But go ahead and pick up 2 beads. And I'm thinking right now I might lower my camera. Let's do this. It's going to be a little tricky to get my hands under it, but these beads are so tiny, guys. All right. Should be interesting. Okay. I'm going to bring 2 beads on. Slide that down. And then come up through that second bead. And feel free to condition your thread. I didn't do that here just because, well, I forgot to bring my thread haven up. But if you want to use a thread conditioner, you can use anything from the products that are at Michael's, like Thread Magic, or you can use like a votive candle. Just take the votive candle out and just slide it over take your thread and just pull it over it. Something like that can help, and is optional. So there's that first ladder. I am going to go back through it. There's one side. And then coming back through. I work slower and a lot more gingerly with Nymo than I do with Wildfire. For a couple reasons. I don't want to pierce my thread when I'm going through my beads. This is really easy to do with this thread. And then if you're, I'll show this to you as we keep going, but if you move really fast, you're going to get knots. But if you slow down just a little bit, your knots are less likely to occur. So that's something I have to keep reminding myself because I want to just pull through really fast and then, you know, keep going. But it's like a good, I don't know, it's a good meditation and slowing down and patience. So there's 4. Let's get 4 more. Okay, bring those down. So we've got our laddered spot here. Still feel like I'm too high up. Laddered spot there. Then there's our beads here. I strung 8. So we're going for the 7 in the middle, and then this is the 8th bead. And now I want to ladder to that bead by going back through that last bead. And so one of the reasons I did that is I want to have a laddered row here at the top. And this is the only time you have to do that. It's just this very first step, and the rest of it is so much easier. Again, here's me going slow so I don't get a knot. And so there's my other side of my ladder. And nothing's super tight yet. So 2 things I'm going to do. Take my thumbnail, pull this side. Again, on this side, and pull tight. And now I'm going to reinforce this part right here one more time. And don't worry if it flips because we can fix that in this very next step. But see, it's going to come loose on you. Just don't worry. Just keep going. And again, just very gingerly, not wanting to poke that thread. There we go. It does work. And it is actually such a beautiful result that I feel like it's worth the extra effort to work with the tiny thread. But as a very, very beginner, I would say the Wildfire, you might have an easier time. So again, I'm going to string just 7 now, right? Because I have my 2 sides on. There's my 7th. And I want to join this one to that open one there. So just go through here. And so you'll get something that looks like that. And don't be afraid to tighten things up. Just grabbing these two here, pull tight. Tail side out of the way. And I'm going to reinforce that. I'll do that every time with the Nymo. It just really helps because this is still coming open, see? So go back through. And one way not to pierce your thread is to kind of push on the edge of the bead when you're going through it. That works really well for me if I do that. And one other difference you'll notice if you're working with a Nymo thread is the beads don't tend to sit side by side right away. It happens later. It happens after you've got a few beads on. But you see how like my first one here, it's, you know, it's a little bit opener than the others, but once you get the beads on next to them, they just automatically sit side by side. And once you've got the suede through it, it's not going to stand out as dramatically different. So let's keep going. It's the other trick of this is just keep going, even if it's not looking as the way you're expecting right away. One more. And I'm going to come back up through this bead, going in this direction. So the thread is exiting out the top, so I want to come through the bottom. Because the goal is to just ladder this one bead next to that bead to create our side. Now, what I wish existed was very tiny Wildfire, like Wildfire 0.004. How cool would that be, guys? Very cool. There's 4. Okay, so why did I string 8? I strung 8 now because I don't have a laddered bead up here and I need another laddered bead. So that 8th one I strung is that bead. So I'm going to come down through that bead. And the reason I'm coming down through it is because the bead that I want to join to it also has its thread coming out of the top. So you bring that together and then come up through it. And so there's the 3rd part of it. Reinforce that. Don't be afraid to keep reinforcing. And again, what I did there was I was just kind of, I'm pushing on the side of the bead. It's a lot like when you're looming. I know Patty out there, you're a loomer, so you know what I mean. Like when you're going underneath the beads and you don't want to hit your warps. They teach us to push up on the needle. Same thing here when you're trying not to puncture your thread. You want to just kind of push on the side of the bead, so the inside of the bead, right? So like when you, let me pick up another bead here. When I'm going through this bead, I'm kind of pushing on the side of the bead instead of just through the center. So see, there's a little pressure here under my finger. You're a lot less likely to pierce your thread doing that. And if you pierce your thread, it's not the end of the world. It just means that you will not be able to pull it back out as easy. And it'll also make your thread passes. If you were needing to get multiple thread passes, it'll make them harder to get through. It'll be tighter. So it makes little micro knots in there. It also, I believe, kind of weakens it a little, but we're reinforcing, so it probably is okay. There we go. There's the other side on. Again, we need 8, right? 7 for our middle, and then the 8th one to ladder. And you want to come back down through that bead there. Last one on that side. And then back up through that 8th bead. and then back through. And all that was is just reinforce there. And there we go. I've already got 4. It goes pretty far. And by the time you get faster, like with everything in beading, you get faster. Your first 4, maybe you're not feeling like you love what you're doing, but maybe by 10, you're like, yeah, I got this. This is easy. I got this. And it's the challenge. The people who become seed beaters are the ones who didn't give up at step 4 and kept going to step 10. Again, I'm just pushing on this one. So hopefully this is something that you guys like. It is definitely unusual. And I wasn't sure if it was awesome or just weird, but it looks really cool. So I thought, hey, let's put the info out there and see what folks do with it. Because I think that you guys are the ones that always next level everything. So I learn from you. Here's my 8. Back through here. I'm shorthanding, you know, just string an 8, coming back to the top. Through here. And this optional step to reinforce. So that's pretty much it. And every time you add a little, you know, part to it, it just gets easier and easier and easier. And eventually you get one that looks like that. And so what I thought I would do is switch over to this one now, unless there's anyone who's wondering, because we've only got a few minutes left and I want to show you putting those ends on. I'm going to thread a needle onto this side. And I want to quickly show weaving in. And this is the same step as adding thread. Adding thread is super easy. So for the sake of demoing, pretend that this one that I'm about to weave in is adding a new one, because it's the same step for weaving in as in bringing a new strand. And so what you want to do is anytime you want to change direction 3 times, you're going to have a good solid lock. And so what I did is I went down through this bead and I'm going to come up through this next one here. It doesn't really matter which beads you go through, choose them. Whichever you like to go through, whichever don't have a lot of thread passes through them is what I tend to do. And now what I'm doing is I'm going back through the last bead that I was exiting from to make a full circle. That's extra locked in. Let's do that once more. And I'm going to travel over 2 beads so that I'm not trying to go through that same bead again. So over here. And now let's do another circle with these beads. And this is where I'm happy that I'm working with Nymo and not the Wildfire, because this step is thick. With the Wildfire, it's a little more tricky. You might need to use your pliers and kind of feel around for looser beads. But I just did that step where, you know, I went through the laddered row and then I made a circle and then I went through a few more and then I made another circle. Now I'm going to go through all. And the reason I'm doing that is because I'm going to trim over here and I'm less likely to get a pokey outy thread if I trim over here. And then however you like to do your trimming, scissors, burner, whatever. If you're using scissors, just push down and pull up. And that should just vanish. If this was your new strand, all you would have had to have done was just to weave into the point where your old thread was. But as I mentioned earlier, if you ended up on the other side for some reason, because sometimes with laddering, it can be tricky to figure out which end you're on. Like if you wanted to end up over here, I come in through here and I'm going to be doing a bunch of spinning and turning, don't worry about it. Because if you ended up over here, you could still make this stitch keep going. You can work from any corner. Just add a bead and start laddering. So from here, the fun part, when I grab your suede, and I'm going to go and grab my, where are they? Ribbon ends. And these are in the handout. They're a 9mm like brass fold over crimp. And start with one. I'm not going to put my bindings on yet. I just want to put this on. Meaning I'm not going to put the lobster claw on to like right at the end. So take your suede and decide which side you want to be up. Now this suede that I'm using has a side that's got like a leathery side and then a suede side. So I decided that was my back. So I put this side forward into the crimp. And here's how these look up close. They have like a little, there's actually a little divot there. Do you see that little thing? That's going to poke through. So it really doesn't matter which side you choose to go with. Just pick one and lay your piece down. Your piece of suede inside of it. And then from there, grab your chain nose pliers and pick a side. It doesn't matter which side you start with. But what I'm going to do is help one of them start, right? I'm going to help one start to come down. There we go. So that's going to be my first side down. That's going to make it easier. And then let's finish that. And be kind of gentle, because it's possible to mar them, but they're actually quite forgiving. And then just very gently squeeze down that one side. And we're going to flip the side over here. And do that same thing. To get it started, it can help to just kind of work from that side a little bit. And it's a really secure hold. It does a really nice job. We'll repeat that on the other side. But let's go ahead and start stringing it through. So super easy. I left it on the spool. I'm going to raise up just for a second. Working directly from it. So because I don't know what length I need yet. I'm not sure. I'm going to measure it at the end. Through one, down to the other, up through the next one. See, just kind of like that. And I actually did this all in one swoop. But basically all we're doing is just kind of weaving through like that. So from here, I want to go above the next one and then under the one after it. So I want to go above this one, under, above, under. You can get through a bunch like that. The finding really helps you. It acts like a needle. So just do over, under, over, under, over, under, just like literally we're doing basket weaving. And there you go. You just keep going. It does take a minute, but it's not too bad. I don't know. I just think it looks really slick the way it just kind of just elevates that. And you'd want to go ahead and weave these through. I know we're getting a little short on time, but you do want to weave it all the way through before you decide to cut the other side. And the reason for that is that if you lay this flat and measure it, like right now, if I lay it flat, I might not totally know where I want to cut it on this side. I mean, you could probably figure it out. It doesn't, so the suede inside is actually staying flat. It's not bending, so it's not adding any length to go through this, but I still feel like it helps to see it on and kind of play with it, decide like where you want it. But in the interest of time, I am going to go ahead and just jump ahead and cut this side. And to do that, let me grab a measurer. I have one here. Oh, well, I had one. Darn. Okay, well, I have another way of measuring. Let's do it this way. So let's see, I want it to be kind of overhanging about that much. So I'll start with a 0 here. Yeah. So I have a little, under my mat, I have a little quilter's cutting board. So I use that to measure. I'm going for a hair under like 6 1/4 because my findings are going to add maybe 1/4 of an inch from this point. And now I'm going to get my scissors. And this part, you want to make sure you cut it flush for these ends. You know, a lot of times you might want to cut on an angle to make it pretty, but for this one, because we want it to sit flush inside of the finding, I'm going to go ahead and make a flush cut here. All right, and so let's put this one on. And the only other thing is you just want to make sure you're doing the same sides uppy as downy. So this is my shiny side, so I'm gonna flip it. And I'm going to be working with it like that. And help it get started. Choose the one that's a little bit more bent down. One side will be a little bit more bent down than the other, which for me is this side. And go like that. I don't know, I have trouble staying on camera with tools, if you guys notice. And then that one's there. I'm gonna finish it up. And again, just really gently, there's no hurry, just take your time with it. It's pretty soft and it should bend pretty readily. So there's that side, and you know, this should be all the way through, but and then it's all set. I made mine too long after all that measuring. But so now all you have left to do is put your findings on. So for findings, again, all I did was I made jump rings and a lobster claw for one side. And then I used the jump rings to make a little chain. So it could be adjustable. And I put a crystal on the end using these head pins. And so that's it in a nutshell. I want to take questions. We've got where are we at? We've got about 7 minutes or so I can demo again if we needed to really fast, or if there's something else that I didn't show that anyone wants to see. I meant to make a check. Yeah, yeah, Tracy, I think so. I think I was just kind of like, I always make everything too short. That's just what I do. I don't know why, but I always do that. And so, but this one actually might be good because see, it's the full adjustable length of this one. So maybe I won't make this one adjustable. I'll just go ahead and put a couple jump rings in the crystal, and then so it should still be okay. But definitely measure it before you cut it better than I did. Yeah. No, so I didn't do anything special to make it stay. It slides everywhere. You could slide it all the way over. The good news is it doesn't come off if you put your lobster claw. It doesn't easily come off. But you could, if you wanted to get it out, you could, but it's not going to happen naturally. You'd have to help it. And the same with this side. Also the reason I put the crystal on. See, so there's just, it does not, the jump rings don't pull through it as readily, but they will if you give it a tug. But the crystal will give you some stopping power. And of course, once it's clasped, it stays on. And it, for me, stays on where I put it as I'm wearing it. And a little bit of motion that you might get is actually kind of fun as a fidget piece. You can kind of roll them around, and it also has a really fun texture. I just kind of like rolling the beads. And so if you're someone who likes fidget jewelry, this is a bracelet that you'll love. It's going to work out really great. Oh, thanks, Patty. Yeah, hey, Patty, if you do a loom, I would really love to see your loom design, because that I had not thought of that idea, and I love it. Oh, thanks, Nadia. All right, well, hey, it looks like, unless there's more questions, I thought I might show next week really quick. And as I was mentioning earlier, we used this one today, which is the 1003 pack that has the all metallics in it. And so for this class, we were using the matte ones, the matte silver and the matte gold. But next week, we're going to be using this bead, which is the shinier version. And if you don't have the 3 packs in your store, this color is already on the Michaels wall by itself too. It's the metallic silver 10-0. You'll be able to find that easily too. And the earrings are over here. Let me grab those. Really pretty little flowers. So what I was thinking for this class next week is I'll show a couple different ways you can work with different discs, because I know finding the same exact howlite disc that I used might not be very fun, you know, just having to find the same exact, but the good news is it doesn't matter. Any disc bead, even if you wanted to work with a finding instead of a gemstone disc, like you could work with just a ring and this is going to work fine. The main part of it is just brick stitching around, creating another layer with these little petals. So the fun part is just making the kind of little petal look. And then at the top, I used a 4mm AB cyan crystal, and I used sterling silver. What are these called? Fish hook ear wires. So this is a gift ready design. This is something that is precious metals and crystal and a gemstone. So holiday planning right here. And then if you're interested in our workshop, we have a 2-hour workshop. That's the, I want to say it's on November 18th. And for that one, I was going to revisit a classic design. This is one that it's been done a lot, but I think we needed to do it because we have crystal and we have all these beautiful CD palettes and findings. And I thought, why don't we go ahead and do our version? So this is the netted. I called it glacial crystal because I went for like blues, and these are really on trend for January 2023, these colors and the crystals. So this is netted rope, or sorry, not netted rope. We did netted rope last week. This is flat net. And so if you're interested in this class and you want to get a feeling for netting, review last week's class and it'll give you a feeling for what we're doing here because it's very similar, just flat. And this is also one where it's interesting because the flat stitch is trickier than the round stitch. It's usually the opposite, but my personal opinion is that a flat version of a net is harder for me. And I think it just has to do with these turning counts. So we'll work through that. We'll have a good 2 hours to work through that and answer questions, and we'll have a beautiful result there. And then let's see, then we're into December. December, we've got holiday bangles. This is super easy. Peyote stitch in the round, even count. And then last but not least, we got the coffee cream and crystal. And this one's really cool because I actually saw already in our bead group and our Facebook group, someone already made these and her version was so beautiful. So, and that gives me happiness because it means that you could totally work this just from the PDF. So I always try to make that possible. But we'll be doing that it's the second class in December. And I just finished and submitted the workshop for December. It might even already be up. It's a brick stitch flower with beautiful fringe that can be an ornament, earrings, or a pendant. And I don't have it in front of me because I left it downstairs, but it's already online, I think, so you can check that out. And it's epic. So yeah. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah. I'm going to switch my view really quick so I can see you guys in the gallery here. And there we go. Thanks so much for being here with me on your Friday. And if you make something beautiful and you want to share it, put it in our chat group. We have PDFs from John Bead, John Bead PDFs, and yeah, it's actually linked in our handout. I put it on the last page. If you're looking for our Facebook group, it's on the last page of our handout here. You can click that. It's actually a link and it'll take you straight to it. And then also if you post anywhere on socials, if you do hashtag make it with Michaels, often they feature in their e-blasts designs from folks who've taken our classes, and you can hashtag John Bead. We love to see it there too, and we'll share it. So yeah, have a great weekend, you guys. I hope you have, not too cold weather and you make great, gorgeous stuff. Lots of love to you.